Now, I don't know shit about obsidian, but I know that there's multiple different colors of obsidian at Glass Butte. So you have regular old black obsidian, and you also have this orangey looking stuff. Here's an old ammo can stuck in here in some rocks. I am gonna put something in here that maybe you guys can come up here and find. In the morning, when I get up, I'm gonna tell you about the story of Bill Brown before we leave camp, and then we're gonna go find that house. We will see you guys in the morning. All right, good morning everybody. Welcome to day 2. So the plan for this morning is we're just gonna have some ham and eggs for breakfast. We're gonna have some coffee, clean ourselves up a little bit, pack up our camp, and then before we go, I'm gonna tell you the story of Bill Brown, and then we're gonna take off and go find his house. All right, sit back and relax for a couple of minutes because I'm going to tell you the legend of Bill Brown. So in 1869, Bill Brown and his family moved to an area just outside of Canby, Oregon. So while in Canby, Bill attended seminary school, and then he moved on to college down in San Jose, California. So while en route to college from Oregon to California, Bill passed by Central Oregon and fell in love with the country out here. So after doing some thinking, Bill decided that when he gets done with school down in California, that he's going to come up here and start a ranch of some kind. So after college, Bill did work as a teacher down in California for about 3 or 4 years while he saved up money so he can buy his ranching piece of property up here in Oregon. So eventually Bill had his money and he started making his way up to Oregon, and he settled on a piece of land that was just east of Wagon Tire Mountain. Now when he bought that property, he actually bought the property there and lived with his 2 other brothers. And they built like a really crappy little cabin with no windows, and it was just, dirt floor, just a nothing cabin, but it was all the money they had. So during that time, Bill and his brothers bought a herd of sheep, and that's where their ranching life began. So the year now is 1882, and Bill and his brothers began buying up properties out here in Central Oregon desert that had water on them. So that allowed them to rapidly expand the size of their sheep herd. Bill had a little bit of a feud with the hired hand of the neighbor, where the hired hand named John Overstreet kept on grazing his sheep on Bill's property. And Bill warned him several times, you can't be grazing your sheep over here. And eventually it led to a gunfight. And when the gunfight was over, Bill was the last one standing and John Overstreet was dead. Now, Bill did have to go to court over that incident, but Bill ended up getting off on self-defense. So in the year 1895, the sheep and cattle wars began. During that time, tens of thousands of sheep got killed by the cattlemen, but Bill Brown kind of made it out of that whole thing okay because he owned so much property that he didn't have to worry about grazing his animals on public land because he had so much private land. So at one point, Bill and his brothers had a really tough winter and they lost thousands of sheep. I think that they ended up with like 500 sheep at the end of the winter. At that point, the 2 brothers decided to move back to the Willamette Valley to live, leaving Bill Brown alone with his operation. So even though Bill was doing this by himself now, he ended up growing that sheep operation back up to thousands and thousands of sheep. So at that point, he had 2 different ranches. He had the Gap Ranch, and then he had the Buck Creek Ranch. So Bill bought the Buck Creek Ranch in, I think, 1910, something like that. And prior to that, it was just a bunch of rustic buildings out there. But Bill ended up buying that property and building a 14-bedroom home up there. So Bill's net worth at this point was about $4 million in today's money. So Bill's net worth grew, and he ended up giving away millions and millions of dollars to schools and universities and churches in the Willamette Valley. And I'm talking like millions and millions of dollars. Bill was actually a pretty smart guy. He never sold a horse that was to be used in the state of Oregon. The reason being, that way, if he found a horse that had his brand on it, he was able to claim it. So when the automobiles started showing up and the war was over and the demand for horses was starting to go down, Bill refused to sell off his land, his horses, So by 1931, Bill was almost bankrupt because he just used up all of his money keeping his ranching operation going, even though there wasn't really a demand anymore. So Bill Brown did eventually sell off his last piece of property, and then he died at the Methodist home that he actually helped build in 1941. All right, well, that's the legend of Bill Brown. If I got any of that wrong, make sure you correct it down in the comments below. But what we're going to do now is hop in the Bronco, make our way up to the Buck Creek Ranch, and see if we can find that 14-room house that Bill Brown built. We just turned off on the road that's going to take us to where Bill Brown lived, and you can see how remote it is. It's about 20 or 30 miles down this road. Now, because there is 2 major historic ranches up here, that means there's going to be probably a lot of historic things on the side of the road we can find that are on BLM land. So for those, I do have some markers where I think there might be some things. So along the way, we're going to stop and look at them if I can find them. So as I'm cruising down the road here, I can't help but think about Bill Brown walking this route, because where we camped was about where the Gap Ranch was, and then his other ranch was Buck Creek, and they are talking 20 or 30 miles between those 2 ranches. And I just can't help but picture him walking, because he had horses, but he didn't use them. He preferred to walk. All right, I was just cruising along the road here and I saw a couple of cans on the side of the road, so we're going to take a look and see what those are. So we have one here, another one here. Ooh, this one you can read. It's an old oil can, something oil, and it has a big M on it. All right, all we found were those couple of cans in this spot, but we're going to keep on going down the road. It's just kind of fun to stop and look at those little historic things. You know, this is like the longest and straightest road on earth, and I'm finding all kinds of historic garbage on the side of the road from like the 1920s, you know, cans and just all kinds of crazy cool things. But I can't stop and show you everything because it'll take forever. But we are about 10 to 12 miles away from the first couple of markers that I have on the map where I know there might be something. So we're just going to keep moving along here. If I find anything really cool, I'll stop and show you. Thought I'd pull over and show you guys this big ass hole. So you can see out there, there's some posts sticking up there, and all around. There's a fence line there and kind of an entrance. And right in the middle is this broken down structure. So you can kind of see it right down in here. That would have been the foundation. Looks like a wood foundation, and then the decking that went across for their flooring. So this actually was a pretty good sized building. You kind of see the outline of it. All right, we can see right here, this would have been a can that had a handle on it. So you can see right there, and there's another one right there. So it's starting to look a little bit more like a homestead, but we're going to keep looking around and see if we can find some more clues. All right, here's our first clue that tells us this probably was a homestead, because this is an old piece of purple glass. Just a little tiny piece of glass was enough to tell me that chances are this was a home and not just some barn out in the middle of nowhere. And scattered all around this area is a whole lot of these flattened pieces of metal here. And sometimes they'll take these and nail them to the side of the house or the roof and use them as siding or roofing material just to kind of shore up their structure a little bit. All right, not too far away here is the dump. So this would have been where they dumped all their cans when they lived here. You can kind of see here's another piece of glass. Then some little tiny pieces of porcelain right here. So that would have been pieces of dishes and things. And I'm just going to kind of sort through all this, and if I find anything interesting, I'll show you. So this is kind of cool. Old oil can right here. Top of it's in pretty decent shape, but the rest of it's long gone. And right here is some porcelain. You can kind of see a pile of it right here. But if you look on this little tiny piece right here, you can still see the decoration. Kind of a purple and green picture that was on it, whatever this was. And right down here, found an interesting piece, and this is a lantern, piece of a lantern. Kind of see where these wires here would have held the globe in place, and the wick would have come up through here. Pretty neato. Well, this is a pretty cool little find. It's hard to believe that somebody lived out here, and I did a whole walk around. I didn't see any more structures like a barn or something like that, so it looks like it was just this home, at least that I could find. But anyway, we gotta keep going down the road because we're starting to get a little bit later in the day, and we still got quite a few miles to cover. This, guys, is truly, truly amazing. Absolutely amazing that this is still standing. It's not going to be standing a whole lot longer. Look how these logs are all put together. So we're actually standing in the cabin right now. You can see the window's pretty low, and I'm wondering if the foundation actually collapsed on this and brought this whole structure down to the ground, because it should be a lot higher. So this is kind of cool. You can see what they used inside to insulate in between the logs, and it looks like just pieces of burlap are stuck in there. Here and there you're also seeing boards that they just kind of stuck in. Kind of see this cool post that goes in through the logs to hold them in place. Runs all the way up through the top here. And here's an old sole of a shoe. You gotta wonder how many miles this thing has seen. So right here you can see all kinds of different colors of glass. Everything from amber to bluish to a purplish color. It's all kind of right here next to this hole. So I'm going to bet that this was the root cellar right here, possibly, or a bathroom, one of the two. And then there's the remnants of the structure that was here, and there's the home. You know, I would absolutely love to spend a couple hours here just kind of going around this whole area looking around for stuff, but we just don't have time. So unfortunately, we have to leave this spot. But we got several miles to go, so let's keep on moving down the road. So after we got done with that last shot, I did a little drone recon around the whole area, and in reality, it's not just that cabin. There's about 5 more structures all around that area that are down, and they kind of look like the one we saw before the cabin. But yeah, they were kind of all over the place. So this was like a little community of some kind right there. Well, it looks like our hopes and dreams of getting a good video on Bill Brown's house are pretty much over. So here's a nice aerial shot of the home that I was looking for. And if you look at the photo of the actual home back in the day, it pretty much matches because it has that kind of roof style, same size, you know, the trees in the front, it looks pretty much the same. So that was the home I was going for, but it doesn't look like we're going to make it there. Well, because we're not at the home where I was going to tell you the love story, I'm going to tell it to you right now. So as I said before, Bill Brown actually died a bachelor. He never married, never had kids or anything like that, but he did have one love in his life, and that was a very much so a younger girl. I think she was like 28 or 24 years old. At this time, he was the most eligible bachelor in the state of Oregon. He was extremely wealthy, and he ended up getting a necklace with a horseshoe with the same shape of his brand that he put on his horses, and it was a horseshoe made of diamonds. And evidently he walked up to her and put it on her neck and said, whatever is wearing this horseshoe brand is mine. And I guess that was how he proposed to her. So as you can probably imagine, she didn't like being called property, and she ripped it off her neck, threw it on the ground, and she ended up marrying somebody else and having a couple of kids. And Bill actually never got married and remained a bachelor after that. Now it's kind of sad because the house in the picture you saw, he built that for his family. So he built a nice big home where he was gonna have a bunch of kids and have a wife, but it just never worked out for him. So it's kind of a sad story in a way. So it's getting to be the afternoon and I need to get out of here because we have quite a few miles to get back. But I'm gonna camp somewhere tonight off Frederick Beat Road, and there's an old cowboy camp there that I assume was a part of Bill Brown's operation. But Whether it was or not, I'll show it to you, and then we'll camp somewhere down there. So I'm gonna start heading on out, and if I find anything interesting, I'll stop and show it to you. All right, I told you at the end of the video I was going to show you a really cool place, an old cowboy camp. This is it right behind me, and it's starting to get dark, so I'm going to do this really quick, and then I'm going to go somewhere out here and find a place to camp for the night. So, all right, whether or not this was one of Bill Brown's original operations, who knows, but I'm just going to pretend it is and show you around. So right there you have the cattle chute, and you have all these cattle pens in here, and you can see there's some modern wiring here. So this is still in use to this day, I believe. There's an old pump house there. It used to be a windmill. Old tank out there, and right over there is an old cowboy shack that we're going to go take a look at. All right, and this is not a homestead, I don't think. I think what this is a place where the cowboys used to come and stay the night and rest. Kind of cool. You can see up there the old stovepipe. So they had a stove in there. This looks like it might have been added on to later. It's kind of funny as you come up to the front door, that looks like a door, but it's actually not. And but if you go in, looks like you have some old cots down here, some old beds, eating table right here. There's the cooking stove. In the back, not sure what this was. Just an extra room in the back. So I'm just kind of taking a look at some of the graffiti, just to kind of see some dates. It looks like the earliest date I can see here is 1999. You know, the whole time I was in that building, I could hear rats up in the ceiling running around. And there's two vultures that are circling this place, which that can't be a good sign. So like I said before, whether or not this was one of Bill Brown's old cowboy camps, who knows for sure. If you know the history of this place, make sure you put it in the comments below. Well, I think that's about it for this video. I'm just gonna hop in the Bronco, find a place to camp and stay the night, and then drive home in the morning. So I think we're gonna sign off right here. So congratulations if you made it this far in the video. I really appreciate you watching. If you liked it, please give it a like, maybe subscribe for more Bronco content, and we will see you next time.